This meeting's called to order. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Board of Directors of the Vallecitos Water District for Wednesday, April 20th, 2022 at 5 p.m. at the district office. Next is Pledge of Allegiance. Could I ask Director Hernandez to lead us in the pledge?
I will, sir. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next is roll call. Please enter your status. Looks like we're all here. Okay, next is additions to the agenda. Don't have any proposed additions, so we'll move on to adoption of tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved by Director Boyd Hodgson, seconded by Director Sinella. Please vote. And it passes unanimously. Next is public comment. Seeing no public and I got no speaker slips, so we'll move on, I guess, to consent calendar. All matters listed under the consent calendar are expected to be routine and non-controversial, to be acted upon by the board by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a board member or member of the public requested a particular item or items be removed from the consent calendar, in which case will be considered separately under action items. I'll entertain a
Move
motion.
to approve tonight's consent calendar.
Second.
Been moved by Director Sinella, seconded by Director Hernandez to move the consent calendar. Please vote. And it passes unanimously. Okay,
Can I interject just a quick point?
sure.
Can we spell Director Hernandez's name correctly on the tally?
Oh, yes.
Can we just, is that an easy correction?
Yes.
Thank you.
I didn't even notice. Thank you. Okay, moving on to action items. 2.1, water supply conditions, update and governor's request.
Yeah, so the board has received monthly updates on water supply conditions throughout the state, and as you know, they haven't been trending in a good direction. So Chris is going to give you a little bit of information on that and talk about enacting drought level 2. Chris, take it away.
Thank you so much, General Manager Prum. Good evening, President Elitharp and board members. Is it up?
You should put it into view mode first, or is it PDF?
It's PDF.
Sure.
It's not showing up on the other screen. Tonight is an update on the water supply conditions. And back on October 25th of 2021, General Manager Prum declared a level 1 drought watch condition, which is a voluntary condition, which we are still currently in. According to a study that was put out by UCLA, they analyzed the western United States and realized that it's the driest it's been in 1,200 years. I don't know how they go back that far and figure it out, but that's what they were able to research and provide. The conditions, the Northern Sierra 8 Station Index shows values of 72% of normal for the new water year. Snowpack content, again, it's the dark blue line. The pale blue is the averages that we would hope to get. The snowpack is down in its water content. The reservoir storage is also looking low. Lake Oroville at 48% and San Luis Reservoir at 46%. On the Colorado River, the upper basin precipitation to date is 97%, which sounds good. Lake Mead is at 33% full and Lake Powell at 24% full, and there is talk about changing allocations on the Colorado River, so that is not looking good either. Our 3-month temperature outlook, above normal favored. The precipitation outlook is just even, whether above or below normal. One of the big things that recently popped up is Governor Gavin Newsom asked water agencies to move to level 2. It was through Executive Order N-7-22. And any agency that's got a water shortage contingency plan, such as us, which was approved by the board back on June 16th of 2021, he's requested that those agencies move to a drought level 2. Some of the information contained in his executive order considers a ban on watering of decorative grass at businesses and institutions. So specifically, businesses versus residential or homeowners associations. I'm going to attend a webinar tomorrow, and they're gonna take questions and comments on it, and as we drill down to what exactly do they mean by non-functional grass. Southern Nevada Water Authority up in Vegas has something in place. I have the feeling they will follow the same sort of pathway, but it's not specifically defined at this point. As an example of decorative grass or non-functioning turf, this is right in front of our building, just kind of looking right across the street. There's a commercial building there, and you can see there's some grass that really doesn't serve much of a purpose. Nobody eats their lunch on it, no kids play on it. It's just there, it's just pretty, but it doesn't serve a specific function. And I use that as my example. I'm not 100% sure what the state will say, but that's one of the things I would point out. And again, this is part of the governor's directive, and the State Water Resources Control Board and DWR are going to codify that at some point.
Question, Chris?
Yeah.
I don't know where the city's gonna fall on that, because some of those grasses are required landscaping areas. And if they are stopped watering and they die, I don't know how the city would react to that. I'm not sure, but.
I'm not 100% sure either. We're gonna see how this one specifically plays out.
All right.
As part of the governor's executive order, he was requesting that agencies move to drought level 2. Our drought level 2 is called Drought Alert. It's a 20% reduction. There's not a whole lot of changes that come with a mandatory drought level 2. We have a lot of permanent restrictions that are in place at all times, and I'll pull a slide up that shows those permanent restrictions. But what happens for us if we move to drought level 2 is that landscape irrigation would be limited to no more than 2 days per week through May, and then once we reach June through October, 3 days per week. And some agencies would have some type of schedule, odd or even, on which days you could irrigate, with businesses having a different date. As you'll see later on in my recommendation, I would recommend that we just allow customers to choose their own 2 days per week. We just allow them to do that.
Chris, what kind of enforcement actions are done if there's non-compliance?
Typically, I am your code compliance officer on those types of actions. And whenever I get water waste complaints, my first effort is just to call the customer and talk to them on the phone. Usually in just making a phone call, and typically just so you're all aware, typically the complaint is excess irrigation, that it's running off into the street. Right. People don't like to see that. And a lot of times the customer doesn't know they have a gardener or whatever that does it. They may have a broken sprinkler head. They'll make those repairs. And I will typically just do that by phone and make that effort. If I'm not successful, I'll usually cite them with a notice of violation just to get their attention. So it's a letter, usually contains an image of the actual violation, what occurred, and explain that they need to take corrective action. I've been here since 2015. I've fined like 2 entities. And basically it was one of the apartment complexes up along Knoll Road, and they would consistently over-irrigate, have it run off, and I would talk to them, and it continuously happened over and over again. And as in my example, it was like passing the police officer on the freeway. we're the water district, we're right here, it's the adjacent street. All of the staff here would see it and tell me, and I would reach out to them, and I just finally got compliance through actually fining them $100.
So is that's spelled out in the ordinance, the fee?
Yes,
And just to clarify, there would be two separate things. One would be a notice of violation, and the notice of violation is not a citation if they fail to comply with the notice of violation, which would say, if we have to do this again, you may get fined or cited. So it's a separate action. We do everything we can to get them in compliance without actually issuing a citation.
yeah, typically a notice of violation resolves it.
Yeah.
You know, it's big red font, scary looking, and usually gains compliance.
Hey, Chris, but it's complaint driven though, right?
Yeah,
You're not
yes.
you're not out proactively driving around,
No,
and we've been through some pretty tough drought circumstances since I've been on the board. I'm thinking back in 2016, 17, or no, actually maybe 14, 15, where we actually were considering having folks drive around. But I mean, I don't think we're anywhere near that at this point, but as of right now, going forward, you think it's just gonna be complaint driven?
yes, and back in 2015, we did have some staff that would take early routes around and look for water waste, and, you know, typically it was excess runoff, call up the customer, and it would get resolved. So we have done that with available staff from operations, but I don't see us doing anything like that at this particular time.
Agree.
Just sharing, in our ordinance 219, permanent water use restrictions, a lot of existing water restrictions that are in place at all times. So regardless of level 1, level 2, level nothing, these are always in place. You know, you're not supposed to irrigate after 10 p.m. or before 6 p.m. Don't irrigate after rain. Not have that irrigation runoff. No washing down the driveway. You know, sweep it instead. Restaurants only serve water on request, and hotels, and there's only about 3 in town, maybe 4. Give the option not to launder the towels and linens daily. So my recommendation is to declare a drought level 2 alert, level 2 within our service area, with customers irrigating 2 days per week through May, and then 3 days per week from June to October, and again on a schedule of their own choosing. That concludes the presentation, and I'm open to questions.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Director Snell?
Oh. Chris, always appreciate the drought updates. It's good information, but it really does come from more of a state perspective. You know, a lot of stuff about Governor Newsom, a lot of stuff about Lake Oroville and Colorado River. How are we doing in San Diego? Because that was the problem we had last time, right? We made all these massive investments. Our ratepayers and all the ratepayers throughout the county spent literally billions of dollars to bring in desalination and raise dams and all this. And yet because the governor took that cookie cutter approach and just told everybody statewide that they would have to cut, 20%. We here in San Diego, not Vallecitos, but the greater San Diego region, were taking perfectly clean drinking water that we weren't allowed to provide to customers and putting it back into untreated reservoirs. I don't want to, I know that we're completely powerless for the most part in this, but I don't want us to make our customers suffer any more than they have to when we have plenty of water in San Diego, because they're paying more for that reliability.
Yeah, the situation in San Diego County is really good. We have taken a lot of steps over the years, replacing fixtures, low flow equipment, changing out landscapes, the desal plant, and I was working up a press release in case the board takes action tonight for tomorrow. And one of the points in the press release is we do not anticipate any water supply problems locally. Desalination is a big part of our portfolio here. So,
Yeah, I agree. I've seen a lot of social media activity around the Water Authority and other agencies in San Diego that, because, yeah, rightfully so, I think they're relieving people's, anxiety about the drought, letting them know that their investments have paid off, and that here in San Diego, we're actually doing pretty good with water. But it's a mixed message, right? Because now we're about ready possibly to approve this drought level 2, and we're gonna tell people that they can only, water their grass twice a week, while there's all this communication that's going around via different media sources saying, we're okay. And so I just think we're, it's just, and this is nothing new. We went through this 5-6 years ago when we went through the last major drought. But I just would like to, when you have your webinar tomorrow, see if there's any conversation about handling this drought statewide in a better way. Not in the way that, I think back then it was Brown and Newsom kind of transitioning. It was handled poorly from the governor's position, in my opinion. And I'm hoping that there was some lessons learned, and that they're going to look at this. It doesn't sound like they're going to, but I'm hoping they would look at this and say, what did we learn last time, and how can we do it better? I would expect any person in a leadership role, to be it private business or governor of California, to have that mindset, right? And so if that comes up, if there's an opportunity to ask, I'd appreciate it.
Certainly.
Thank
You
you.
want to add something, James?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not the best news. I was on a discussion with the state regulators. This is several months ago, and there were several people, including people from the North County Coalition, that brought up the point that San Diego County has a different situation than much of Central and Northern California. The regulators at the time took our information, took that into account, but said in general they're still looking for a one-size-fits-all solution. And also that even the allocation that San Diego County got last time. So for example, we were able to use, our agency was able to use 7% reduction max for our desal, which is well over 7%, obviously, of our total water portfolio. And that's not even in place at this time, but they're considering it. But at this point, there is none. So it appears
So they
it's the same.
didn't learn any lessons, huh?
It appears it's the same policy that's being driven. They heard what we said, but I don't believe they've taken any action at this time. But my information is about 6 months old, so.
Yeah, the situation hasn't changed much. The local agencies and the Water Authority are trying to work hard with the regulators and the elected officials in Sacramento to get them to understand the situation. And at the same time, they're trying to tell the customers here that we've made all this investment. We are in a better situation, but at the end of the day, they're subject to the regulations imposed up in Sacramento. So it's a tough balancing act by the Water Authority, but there are mixed messages, and I don't know how to give a clean message on something we don't control entirely.
Yeah, it really is,
I
it
think
really is a shame.
one thing we can do locally for messaging is make sure we coordinate with the Water Authority on their messaging. I mean, they've put out a lot of information that says, yeah, we've spent billions over the years, but we still need to save. So that's kind of goes hand in hand. So I think it's important to coordinate that messaging.
One question.
Go ahead.
It's also the case that we can vote no regarding the level 2 drought. I mean, that's kind of a simple answer. My question about the restaurants, and occasionally my family and I go out to eat, and sometimes we're asked about water and sometimes we're not. It's just brought to our table. So what kind of outreach do we do to remind restaurants that technically you're supposed to ask rather than just bring it?
So that's good for me to hear. We've done outreach with the restaurants in the past. It's probably time to do it again. The other thing too is if you see that, you don't have to, throw down your business card and try and enforce it on the spot. Just let me know. I'll reach out to the restaurant. There is training that deteriorates over time where, staff were learned a long time ago not to provide water without requesting it. But, there's staff turnover and the training deteriorates, and so it can happen. So, when we go to, if we go to drought level 2, I'll be reaching out to the restaurants, I'm gonna reach out to the hotels again. They're pretty good about it, they have their, it saves them money not to have to launder the towels and so forth, but I do have information materials that they can put in their units in the hotels and so forth, so, it is time to do that again.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Seeing none, do we have a motion?
Second.
Was there even a first?
I thought there was a motion. I thought
Sounds
Tiffany-
like it failed, and we're moving on to the next action item.
Yeah, is there a motion or not?
I'll go ahead and move
Okay.
staff's recommendation.
And then I'll second. I thought Tiffany had provided a motion.
Okay, any other discussion? If not, please vote. And it passes 4-1. Thank you. Okay. Next is item 2.2, cost of service study update.
Yeah, I'll kick it off, and I'll turn it over to Mike Arthur and to Wes. The key word here is an update. This is just an update. We're not looking for any action by the board at this time, but we are, within a couple of meetings, we will be looking for direction from the board to initiate a Prop 218 process, if that's the board's desire. So we have been working on a cost of service study for quite some time, and we're getting very close. We met with the consultant just today. He came down, and Mike and the consultant locked themselves in a conference room, and I think we've made great progress, and Mike's going to tell you how close we are. Take it away, Mike.
Thank you, General Manager Prohm. President Elithart, members of the board, it's actually great to be here in person, so to share that rather than being on Zoom and worrying about whether my mic is on or not. So as General Manager Prohm mentioned, it's just a cost of service update, no action required. Any feedback that I can get from today would be beneficial for when we come back. So let me go over our calendar real quick with you. Oh, shoot, okay, it's advancing too much. So twice last year, we met with the Finance Committee and the board, and then we met with the Finance Committee last week to give updates. So here we are today on April 20th for another board update. What we hope to do is come back on May 10th for the full presentation. And at that time, if the board should choose, we would prepare and mail out the Prop 218 legal noticing. And that kicks off a timeline. Once you mail out the legal notice, you have 45 days before you can actually have the public hearing. So then the tentative date for the public hearing, and again, it's down the line, so it's tentative right now, is July 6th. And then if so chosen, the new rates could go into effect the next day. So let me go over some of our current rates real quick. And so our rates are broken down between our fixed rates, the ready to serve, and our variable rates, which is commodity. This slide will just show our current fixed charges. What I want to really focus on mainly is the 5/8 inch customer. Everything else is kind of a multiple of the 5/8. So if the 5/8 goes up X, the other ones go up or the same percentage amount. So that's why I just want to focus on the 5/8. Plus about 80% of our customers, or a little bit more, are our 5/8 inch customers. So currently the ready to serve charge for that type of customer is $36.55. And on the current customer's bill, it just shows one line item, $36.55. It does not break out between the VWD portion and the San Diego County Water Authority portion. What we hope to do, if our billing system will allow it, is to break that out on the bill so it can delineate what specifically those charges are, the $36.55. It's just a little bit more transparent to the customer. So here's a representation of what it kind of would look like. So these are the proposed rates right now, and these are draft in format right now. So again, looking at the 5/8 inch customer, we're preliminary proposing to go from $36.55 just to $37.07, which is a 52-cent increase. Let me go to the next. It's a 52-cent increase, or about 1.4%. So pretty much across the board, the fixed charges would go up about 1.5%. And just to go back a little bit, and maybe I can show it with my mouse. So right now, like I said, the total bill, the customer's bill only will show the 3707 in current format. What I'm hoping to do, again, if our billing system will allow it, is to show that the ready-to-serve charge is broken really into three components. There's a San Diego County Water Authority, their fixed component that we are charged. There's actually two kind of fixed components. There's because they spell out specifically the IAC, Infrastructure Access Charge. So that's another component from San Diego County Water Authority pass-through. And then the remainder would be the VWD meter and billing ARC component of that. And that covers a lot of our fixed costs, meter replacement, and things like that.
Question. I hope somewhere on the bill, you're gonna identify what SDCWA and IAC are, so the ratepayer can know.
Yeah, there is an asterisk if we can do it. There would be an asterisk on the bottom that says,
Perfect.
and it would probably even have a /NWD as well in that component too.
Good.
So yes, and I should always let you guys know, if I use acronyms or go too fast, please let me know. Especially when I get into Excel, I love it. To me, it's the world. So if you need me to slow down or anything, please let me know. I get so excited about this stuff. I enjoy it. And in the future, I do want to let you know, we've mentioned this a couple of times, we do want to include pass-through charges. So if the Water Authority has, and they say your fixed charge is going to be 6%, then the charge for the following year would be a 6% increase on that line item. What makes it good, if we could show this on the bill, is it would delineate the 6% or whatever it is from the Water Authority, separate from the VWD internal charges. So that's the commodity portion. The variable, that was the fixed portion. The commodity portion would follow the same format. Currently, we have 3 tiers in our system, $377 for tier 1, $475 for tier 2, and $918 for tier 3. And again, on the bill, it just shows one line item. Again, assuming that the billing system will allow it, we'd like to show the pass-through charges from San Diego County Water Authority. And there's footnotes on there. I'll get to those footnotes in a minute. And in the VWD internal portion, and in the discretionary offsets. Now, that's a new terminology that we've kind of talked about in prior meetings. But the discretionary offsets are basically our property tax revenue and our redevelopment taxes. And we're allowed to use that discretionary revenue to offset specific customer classes, customer rates, customer charges. And going through with our last 3 meetings with the board and the finance committee, the strong focus was on trying to offset the lower tiered users, those that use the least amount of water. So that's what we did here. So if I can get the circle away, I'll just show you that right now we get about I think combined almost $4 million, $3.9 million in property tax. Allocating it to the tier 1 and tier 2 would be about a 77-cent offset for tier 1 users and about a 25-cent offset for tier 2 users. So I'd bring, and I'm going to put the circles back. The tier 2, one of the things that I mentioned to the board last time we met was trying to keep tier 1 rates the same. So that's what this model, our new cost of service study, is accomplishing. So the tier 1 rates would still remain at $3.77. So for a 5/8" customer, that's 0 to 6 units of water. And then for tier 2, it'd be $4.91, and in tier 3, about $8.50. So as I mentioned, the tier 1 would remain the same, no increase. Tier 2 would go up about 16 cents, and tier 3 would actually go down about 68 cents. I'll explain that in a little bit. So that right now, our commodity costs, our cost of water supply are allocated. The desal water is really allocated a lot on tier 3 currently. That's why our tier 3 rates are at $9.18. The new cost of service study, our desal water supply is more of a supply reliability issue. It is not meant to punish or burden onto those customers that use more water. So our new cost of service study has blended the total cost of water, and you'll see that the pass-through rates from San Diego County Water Authority remain the same on tier 1s, 2, and 3. So it blends the cost of water Again, because it's a supply reliability issue that benefits all users, whether they use 1 unit of water or 100 units of water. So that's the preliminary draft on the commodity rates. Some questions? So the
I do
sample-
have a quick question.
Yes.
Sorry, that's really loud. What I've never seen that I think would be really interesting to see is the percentage of our customers broken out, not today, of course, but the percentage of our customers broken out that are only in tier 1 or that are tier 1 and tier 2. And I know that we have different size pipes, but I'm thinking about specifically, the 5/8, which is most of our customers, the residential. I think that would be really interesting to see, just so that we can get an idea of what proportion of our customer base is being impacted by these rate increases.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I
Thank
have
you.
those numbers again. I'm not prepared to show them today, but absolutely, on the May 10th meeting, I will have that for
Thank
you.
you.
Yeah, and it's a little challenging sometimes, because any particular customer in 1 month, they may only have tier 1 water, but in the hotter months, they may go into tier 2, maybe even tier 3. Mike likes to talk about his 275,000 lines of data. What that does is look at our 22,000 customers and their 12 monthly bills. So that's how you get to that number.
Right.
So we can kind of look over those 275,000 bill customers, how many times did people go in over tier 1? So it's not as simple as saying 10% of our customers are in tier 1. It's a little harder to do. But
Right, and when I present that data, I'll reiterate that point. So I look at it as customer months, not customers, and I can tell you what percentage of customer months are in tier 1. So for example, if you were to use 3 units this month, but 10 units next month, you'd be 1 month in, less than 6, and another month in 6 to 10. So we add up all those 270,000 lines of data and do it that way, so.
But you could, for example, if we're talking about my water usage, but you can average all of my water usage together, and I would average, 12. And, that puts me on average in tier 2.
Right.
So,
So our typical average customer is about 11.9, and I'll get more data for you,
Yeah,
and
okay.
I'll spell out what the assumptions and what the methodology is behind them, because I don't want you to think, like General Manager Perone stated, that if I say 10% of our customers use 4 units or less, that it's the same customer every single month. It's 10% of all of our customers combined over the 12-month period.
yeah, and I guess sort of what I'm getting at is, if we have 2% of our customer base that stay within tier 1, then it's kind of an artifact, right? So that's sort of where I'm going with this is, I'm sort of focused on the outcome, just to get an idea of, our tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. I don't know if that's arbitrary or if it's data-driven. So that's what I'm trying to get at.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Quick question. Go ahead.
I wanted to just point out that whatever tier 1 is, 100% of our customers are gonna benefit from that rate for the first 6 units. It's only the units that they use afterwards. So even though you might say that only 10%, 5%, 2%, whatever it might be, stay within, 100% of our customers still benefit from it.
Correct.
So you're the numbers guy and I'm not, but I'm trying to understand, we're having a cost of service study. We need to increase rates because our costs are going up, buying water from Metropolitan. When I look at this, tier 1 staying the same, tier 2's going up 17 cents, tier 3's going down 68 cents. Seems like our revenue's gonna go down.
So hits the point that Director Boyd Hodgson actually made, is that if you look at, how many percentage of those customers are, and I'll give you estimates right now, don't write these down. Probably about 45% of our customers stay within tier 1, probably about another 40-ish% stay in tier 2, and about 15% go into tier 3. So when you take the proration, and again, I might talk too fast here because now you're getting into my ballpark.
You're good.
When you take the proration of them all, it averages out to actually a revenue increase of probably only about $50,000.
That's what I'm wondering, it's not a big revenue,
Yeah.
okay, so it's very, very small.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So, and I'll have those percentages, so it'll be a little bit clearer as to, when you look at it, I agree with you. It's like, it doesn't add up.
Yeah, but it does.
yeah.
It does.
And don't forget, this is
I trust
just-
you.
And don't forget, this is just the commodity portion. The ready-to-serve was going up for all the customers.
Right, and again, pretty small though, yeah, okay.
Pretty small.
No, which is great, I'm glad it is.
It's pretty small, but when we send out 275,000 bills per year, it adds up.
Right. It was a little over 1%, right? It was, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So Mike, do you have your slide that shows the average bill?
Yeah, so that was what I was going to now. So currently, so we talk about the average single-family resident customer, and I'll define that again, is a single-family residence with a 5/8-inch meter using 13 units of water a month. And I do want to go back to why we use 13 units of water, and I'll mention this again on May 10th, is back before the 2015-16 drought, we did a study of 5-year average, and our average use was about 13.1 units of water. So we use that as our typical average. Now with some of the things that Chris mentioned, low flow and all these things, it's about 11.9. We don't change our methodology in using the 13 units because then it would actually look like our bills have gone down. If I used 13 last year and I'm using 12 this year, so consistency basis, we always use 13. Plus as a benchmark with other agencies, many other agencies use 13. So when you see 13 as the average single-family residence, I don't want you to necessarily think that that's what our average customer uses. It's about 11.9. So our average single-family residence, 13 units, their current, and this is water only. Nothing that you'll see today includes sewer. Real quick, sewer is not going to be considered in this cost of service study for this year. So it's just all water. So our average single-family residence is about $92.42. Well, it is. With the rates that I showed previously, it would increase to $94.06, which is a $1.64 increase, or about 1.8%. And just going back, the last increase was March of 2020, so it'd be about 28 months. In that 28-month period, our rates have only gone up 1.8%, when our costs have gone up probably about 10 for our external costs. Chris was mentioning drought rates, so we're still working a little bit on the drought rates. But what happens, if you remember in budgets, I always do a variability, what happens if our water demands would go down 10%, would go up, kind of like a sensitivity analysis. If they were go up 10%, what would happen to our overall revenues, our net revenues? So that's what this shows, and I'll actually go to the bottom half real quick to show you. We sell about 6 million units of water, which is, each unit is 100 cubic feet. So with a 10% rate, 10% demand reduction, that would decrease our demand to about 5.5 million units of water. And I know a lot of numbers here. The revenue loss on that would be about $3.8 million. That's how much we're collecting less from customers because they're conserving water. Now, we would have some expenditure savings. We're not buying as much water from the water authority, plus we'd have some internal savings. Those savings would be about $2.4 million. So the net impact of a 10% water demand reduction would be about $1.4 million. So currently, as the way the drought ordinance is written, drought level 1 is a voluntary. So we wouldn't propose doing any drought rates for a voluntary drought rate level 1. If we did, just to show you, and I have a strike through for it, it'd be about 20, to make up that $1.4 million, it would be about 25 cents per unit of water. Okay, so similarly, and I group these into tiers 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, because the way our drought ordinance is written, levels 2 and 3 are called a drought alert. Levels 4 and 5 are called drought critical. And level 6, I think we're all moving out of the state because,
No water.
yeah, there's no water. So that's why these are grouped right now, although we could delineate them to and have them a separate line item, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's still kind of a work in progress right now. I just wanted to show the methodology of what would happen if demand would decrease. What does that mean on our units of water sold? What would it mean on our revenue coming in? And what would it mean on our expenditures saving? And just to show you that our revenue loss exceeds our expenditure savings. So we just kind of want to let you guys know, so on May 10th, there's no surprises on that.
Have you seen the 1.4, well, you said that so you mentioned something about voluntary, and level 1 is voluntary, and what we just voted on is also theoretically voluntary, right? Drought level 2
I'm
is
not
a
familiar with
voluntary
the drought level,
cutback,
so, Chris. Mandatory.
is mandatory. Okay, so how soon could we know the net budget impact?
Right, so this is kind of the things that we're still kind of drafting. You put in a drought level 1, 10%. We don't see a 10%, we haven't seen a 10% cutback. So part of my recommendation would be is not to necessarily tie them hand in hand, is that you would declare, and this is just my, a draft thought of my, you would declare a 2 or a 3 or a 4, but then we'd actually look and see what the real numbers are, because the demand might not come in that much lower. When the cutbacks were, was it 20% in 2015, 16, I think we only saw like a 14, 13% demand decrease. So I would bring back to the board the actual numbers, and then it would be up to you to decide what to do with those numbers. I would give you a recommendation, well, not necessarily a recommendation, I would give you a number such as this, such as it's 32 cents or it's 45 cents, and then it would be up to board discussion.
How much time would you need to determine that? I would think you'd need like 6, 9, maybe even 12 months.
Well, I can kind of tell demand in like a 3-month period. I can, I have 270,000 lines of data, so I'm looking at this all the time. So it's almost pretty much real-time data for me.
Okay.
Now you're coming into the summer months too.
Yeah.
Higher demand time periods.
Right,
You
and then,
should know pretty quickly.
I would compare it not only to last summer, but I would also compare it to weather conditions too. You can't just take a 3-month period, compare it to a 3-month period. You have to look, was there a lot of rain? Was there not a lot of rain? What other variables are in that? So I would bring all that analysis to the board. Okay. So then the Prop 218. So I just have a sample. I'm not ready to hand this out yet. It's just our draft Prop 218. So a Prop 218 is kind of a boring, mundane legal notice. As you know, every month that you get your SDG&E bills, there's always that legal notice with all the fine print that you can't even read with your glasses. So a lot of the 218, we can't be flowery and overly, it's not a between the pipes. So it's a legal thing that has to have certain things in it. There are some things that we have some leeway in, but so it is a legal notice. But the sections that it would have would be the average single family impact that I just showed you. And we're leading off with that. I have an example of OMWD's Prop 218, and there's a, you wanna talk about boring, there's a totally boring. Sorry.
Okay, you're in trouble now.
Yeah. But they don't get to the rate
just cut off
impacts,
our
I think,
water.
until the last page. So we're gonna bring that straight out in front. It'll have water rate adjustments if necessary. What are the water rates fund? What are we doing to control cost? How are the rates determined? Basically through the cost of service study. And that there will be proposed 5-year pass-through increases. And I'll have a section on the rated to serve charges, which I showed you. The commodity charges, the drought rates, which I just previously showed you. And then how to provide comments or protests. And then also have a rate comparison between other agencies.
So I have a question back on sewer. So if we're not including sewer, how do we handle that in this intervening 5-year period? Is it something we just handle separately?
Yeah, we would handle it separately, and as you all know, if we don't make any changes to the sewer rate, the rates currently in place just remain the same. So we'll continue to look at the sewer rates over the intervening years, and if we get to the point where we think a rate increase is required, we would probably go through a separate Prop 218 process for sewer only, unless we felt at the same time the water needed to be tweaked as well.
And I just wanted to go back a couple of slides. Director Olatharp, you asked during our Finance Committee meeting, so what would happen to the overall bill if you included sewer? What would be the increase? And real quick, if you remember, I said it'd be about a 1.8% increase on the water-only portion. If we add in, I believe it's a $38.99 for the sewer portion, the overall net increase is about 1.2%. So I just kind of wanted to throw that out there too.
Okay.
And about 95% of our customers are both water and sewer. We have some customers that are just water and some customers that are just sewer. So it would affect about 95% of our customers base. So here is that rate survey that I've talked about. So this is the I think there's only 23 agencies here, although there might be 24. So this shows, and this was data that was updated May 6th. It shows where VWD is, and that's our current is this bar right here. It's 92.42. With the proposed rates as in the, that I showed you today, the rate would be about 94.06. And then the average for San Diego County is $109. And it ranges anywhere from $74 up to $145. So we're,
What day is it today?
oh, I'm sorry, it should say April 6th. Sorry, I'm Karnak, I
I gotta look
guess.
at my phone, I'm like, is it
Sorry.
really May?
April 6th. It was April 6th. Apologies.
Jeez.
So we're,
So are you gonna show this in the 218 notice?
this is in the 218 notice, it's in the back page of the 218
It's
notice.
important to show.
Yes. And we are currently, I believe 14% below the average in San Diego County, which is actually kind of remarkable if you look at our mix of water, that 1/4 of our water supply is desal water, which costs almost double what the water authority is. And we are the largest taker of desal, direct desal.
Hey, Mike, what you just said is incredibly important, and I think very impressive too for everybody in this room and everybody who works for VWD. To be in the lower, probably looks like third in the county, although we have made those investments in desal. There's gotta be a story there. How did we do it, right? I'm asking a bit rhetorically right now, but, for our mastermind in public relations and our general manager and others, that's a story that we need to tell.
Yep.
And I don't know the answer, so that's why I'm asking our experts. But let's see if we can dive into that and at the next meeting or meeting after, give us a little update on how we were able to do that.
Certainly.
So Director Boyd Hodgson asked that very question at the Finance Committee. The answer we got was great management.
Yeah, I'm not buying that one, but I mean,
And I would say even further, if you look at the 3 of the 4 agencies below us have their own local water supplies. They have surface water reservoirs. So in essence, they get free water a lot of the times with rainfall runoff. They have to treat it, but it's usually considered a lower cost water. Carlsbad's the only other one that's below us that doesn't have its own local water supply, other than the desal supply that they buy. And I would guess even with Oceanside, you realize they just came on board with their pure water project. That bar is not gonna stay where it is right now for Oceanside. It's gonna start moving to the right. No knock against their project, it's an awesome project, but
Probably flip
that'll start to reflect their local supply, just like ours already reflects our desal local supply.
Yes, so there are 24 agencies. Camp Pendleton's not shown because
Okay.
they just have an emergency connection.
So one question, and I'm a positive guy and I appreciate all that's done. This is awesome. Just a voice of concern, because with water rates going up, everything else going up, we're trying to inch our way up with just a 1.7 increase. I'm concerned about, eventually, are we gonna have a spike? So I'd rather have a gradual, a 2.5 increase of 3% instead of a 1 and then a 7.
Right.
Are we looking at that, or what's going on?
So right now, I would call what I propose for this increase is more of a reallocation, because we're trying to incorporate the melded water supply costs instead of putting everything on tier 3 for the desal. So this first one is just kind of a reallocation of the 1.7.
This first rate?
In July,
This first
July,
cost of study?
August, yeah,
Okay.
July, August of 2022, whenever we
Okay.
get to that. Starting in January of 2023, that's when the pass-through costs would come in. And with OMWD, for example, they did their pass-through, but they wanted to give some kind of limit on the amount of pass-through costs. So they limited their supply costs to 9%. So if, for example, if San Diego County Water Authority did a 12% increase, by their own Prop 218, they could only limit it to 9%. So we will be proposing something similar for the pass-through. We're thinking somewhere around the 7% limit for external pass-through costs, so our cost supply of water, and about a 4% increase for our internal controllable costs. And that would be the maximum. So if for next year, if San Diego County Water Authority said it's 4%, it would be the lower of 4% or our limit.
Perfect.
Kinda.
Thank you. Makes sense.
Yeah, Director Pennick, we agree with you. We don't want to try to artificially keep rates low and then have to have a really extreme rate increase to catch back up to where we need to be.
Like Metropolitan.
Like Metropolitan, yeah. So that's not good for anybody. It's not good for us here at VWD or our customers. So that predictable, steady increase is better. And that's what I think you'll see in the Prop 218 process.
Perfect, thank you.
And one of the things we do with the budget, actually, we do a 5-year forecast that's pretty detailed, and then another 6 to 10-year forecast. So we look out in the horizon, so we're not looking just in a vacuum in 1 year. And we do try to smooth out some of those costs too when we pass through the costs.
Yeah, and one of the things during the 5-year plan, you'll see that our forecast is like a 4% growth, and that's actually the cap that we're proposing. And when we look historically, costs have been controlled very well by the district. So that includes major costs like salaries and benefits. And as you know, Director Snell and other directors, the initiatives we've taken with CalPERS, OPEB, and other major benefit and salary initiatives, that's a lot of the savings. And controlling our overall costs ourselves is how we've really been able to maintain the rate that we have.
Great.
Thank you.
So that's then the last thing I wanted to talk about was our cost of service study actual report. So it's still draft format. We met with the consultant today, all day today. And so the report is basically the administrative record, okay? And it details all the calculations and methodologies. So you'll say, Mike, you came up to $3.77, $4.91, and $8.50. How did we do that? What really was into that? And that's what the report would actually do. It's a lot of boring material for you to read, but it has all the details in there. So it's very informative. So it's, it has all that detail. So that would be provided to you before the May 10th meeting, as well as a draft of the Prop 218 would be provided to you before the May 10th. I want to make sure I got my right month, May 10th meeting.
Can you not make informative exciting as well? Does informative have to be boring?
In this case, it kind of is, but
There's no way to dress up to it.
no.
All right.
So the cost of service study, like Mike said, it's the administrative record. It's not just a nice to have, you have to have it. Because if you don't have it and you get a legal challenge, you have no defense. So if our rates were challenged, that's the document that we'd be looking at and presenting to the court to explain how we got to the number, to the answers we came up with.
Thank you.
And that's available to the public?
Yes, that'll be available to the public, and it'll be on our website as well. Yeah.
Mike, are you done?
Yeah, if there's any other
Yeah, I was just
questions.
going to add one thing. So this cost of service study in the Prop 218 process we're going through right now has 3 things that our current rate structure doesn't have. So it is going to have, where was it? Oh, so it's multi-year rates. So heretofore, we've done like 1-year rate increases. I guess in the past, we did like 2-year rate increases. But the current one, we set the rate, and then if we wanted it, we had to do it again in the subsequent year. It also has pass-through rates, which we've never done before. So we're trying to find a way to pass through these water authority costs without having to go back through a detailed Prop 218 process. And then it has the drought rates. So our current rate structure does not have drought rates. Previously we did, but when we did the most recent one, those were dropped. So this one includes all 3 of those things. So it's a big step forward. It's a really important process that we're going through.
Including multiple years in this report, does that save us money so that we don't have to continue doing it, or repeating the cost of service study year over year over year?
It does. I mean, every time you do a cost of service study, it's expensive. You usually get a consultant on board, so that we would save that money. It stops us from having to go through the process of having to explain this to the public every time. We're trying to explain it once in a way that's predictable for them in the future. We're trying to end up with a cost of service study and a model so that we can do the future cost of service in-house using that model, just taking our budget numbers, information from Water Authority and Metropolitan, and calculate them ourselves. So, but yes, there is a cost, not always in dollars, but just resource impacts on staff.
Yeah, I've got a question on what's subject to pass-through. It's only the Water Authority?
Yeah, I believe that we're not doing anything like with an SDG&E pass-through.
That's what my question was. Did you look at the possibility of the energy costs? since they're so volatile.
Yeah, we did, but one of the things with solar, we really haven't gotten enough information back on the solar to see how that offsets. So that might be one thing we look at in the future, but until we have a history with that,
That makes sense.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so one thing I would add, so Mike mentioned that there may be a cap, 6-7% for water authority costs, and we may have like a 4% limit on increases for our internal costs. SDG&E may be considered one of those internal costs. It drove up our budget, so we may need to increase our percentage to reflect that. But that's a good example. If for some reason our 4%, if that's what we come up with, isn't enough, and we're only 3 years through this 5-year rate increase, we may say, let's go back to the drawing board and do it again, because SDG&E rates have increased so much that we can't absorb those costs anymore. So nothing would prevent us from going out again before the 5 years.
All right, any other questions?
Just to be
Go ahead.
confirmed, so if everything goes according to your plan, we won't have to do this for another 5 years.
Right, you'd only need to come back to adopt the rates, it wouldn't be a public hearing. So every year before we would increase the rates, we'd come back October, November, and you'd vote on it.
Yeah, and like always, the public would have a chance to come, but it's not a majority protest hearing like you get with the Prop 218 process.
All right, thank you. That's for information purposes only tonight. Thank you. All right. Moving on to action item 2.3, San Diego North Economic Development Council Annual Economic Summit.
Yeah, this is a pretty simple event. So I think it's on May 11th. San Diego North is having an annual summit. Their group is not on our list of pre-approved organizations for per diem or expense reimbursement. If any of the 5 directors are interested in going and want to get reimbursed, either per diem or expenses, we need pre-board approval. And that's all this is. Does the board want to authorize that?
Having attended the last 3 of these, they're pretty informative, and water is one of the topics that they always touch on, so I would hope that we could approve the per diem for that particular event.
Well, I agree. I think I've been to a few of them, and I think they're worthwhile. I think they're beneficial to see what our constituents are going through economically. It's been worthwhile, as far as I'm concerned.
I'm on the fence about this. I've actually already bought a ticket. I planned on attending. But the speakers slated for this event are from Wells Fargo. They're a hotelier. And they are, I forget the other 2, but there is no water on the agenda this time. The cost of attending this, if we all get paid $200 to go, that's $1,000. And it's also the cost of each ticket, which is, $140 times 5. What we're doing is we're asking our ratepayers to pay for that. And, I think if we're gonna justify it that there's information about water, I'm not sure that that's the case. If we're gonna justify it as kind of a board perk, then let's be transparent about that.
Is this a motion required for this?
Yeah, we would, and
I would move that we allow the per diem for this particular event.
just for clarification, per diem and expenses, the price of admission too? That the whole
Yes.
thing, okay.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second? I'll second that for discussion purposes.
I mean, for discussion, it seems like it cost, can we just send one representative and they go get the information and report back?
Yeah, I don't personally plan on attending, so
And I don't know much about it at all, so.
I've served on their board, so I'll talk a little bit about it, and I don't plan on attending, and I'm on the fence how I'm gonna vote on this as well, but, it's more than, in the past, the 2 directors were correct, there's been a lot of discussion about water. But what I found when I was involved with them and would attend their events, it's so much more than just specifically talking about water from the stage. I talked about water with every single person in that room, and we're talking about our local businesses. And that level of communication, that level of engagement is so critical, especially as we start entering into these tougher drought times. And that, when I was on their board back, I think it was 14, 15, we were in the exact same situation that we find ourselves in today. And so there's a tremendous amount of value. Unfortunately, I don't think I'm gonna be able to make it, but I wouldn't define it as a water conference or a board perk. I think that's mean-spirited, insincere, but nevertheless, we can still have a debate. Do we want to have this expense or not? But I don't like that language about board perk.
Who's the sponsor again? What's the event? I'm sorry. North County,
San Diego North Economic Development Council,
and it's an annual event,
annual event. Yeah.
and you've gone in the past? Has it been per diemed in the past? Has it been an expense in the past?
Yes.
I think most years, yes.
We voted
So
on it.
this would be a vote to delete that then?
Yeah, I think there's been discussion in the past about adding it to the ordinance that pre-authorizes it, and it never made that level, so it's always been this. Every year we take it to the board to see, this year, do we want to authorize the per diem and expenses or not? So a couple things, we could say no, we could say yes to this year, or we could say yes and add it to the list, so we don't have to do this next year. Those are kind of the options that the board has.
And the cost is the cost of a ticket? It's not travel, it's right here in North County?
Yeah, it's in San Marcos.
State.
Some apply for a reimbursement for mileage, so mileage, the ticket to get in, if there's a parking fee, I don't think there is, and the per diem, the $200.
Now, we could consider limiting it to a certain number of directors. I would support that.
I'm in that camp too. I'd like to support maybe one and just go and get the information and report back. I understand what Mike's saying as far as the value is sitting shoulder to shoulder and talking with people about water, but
You'll be amazed what you learn.
Well, it appears that I may be the only one that attends, so limiting it to one, I'd modify the motion to limit it to one board member, myself being the named board member, to attend the conference.
Were you not gonna go, President Althor?
No.
So was Jim the only one?
Yeah.
Director Boyd Hodgson.
I already have a
Oh,
ticket.
okay,
I have a ticket.
well, that's not fair to Director Boyd
Oh,
Hodgson.
well,
either.
then why don't we limit it to two? I mean, really, we're talking, what, $340 times two on a $37 million budget, where the other portion is, this identifies to the rest of the county that VWD is interested in support and gaining knowledge as to what's going on. That we don't live in a little bubble here. That was what we used to do, and then we have gradually moved out of that to be more representative to the ratepayers and also the other businesses in the county, so.
I think we can hold both of those ideas in our minds at the same time, and I would support, my not seeking reimbursement, since I had already planned to go, and if Director Hernandez wants to go, I would support that as well. I think this is a networking opportunity. It's different from other conferences that we go to where we gain knowledge about water. It is a networking opportunity, and there is value in that. I fully appreciate that. Is there enough value to pay for all of us to go when we have not paid to join other organizations that are water specific that can provide value? And I'm thinking specifically about the U.S. Water Alliance that I have asked about, that are in line with our mission. I don't think that I don't think that there's as much value for all of us to go, but I would support Director Hernandez going, and I will continue to plan on going as well.
Okay, we have an amended motion then?
And just,
Yes.
when you say there's value to the individual, value to the district, and I know that's, but, I mean, when you're saying it's networking,
I think it's both,
because I
right? It's
know
both.
nothing about this event, so that's why I'm in the dark here.
The people that will attend are business leaders from the area, politicians from the area. It's an economic development networking event.
So had we approved the monthly meetings that they did? Is that in our list of approved?
No,
No, I don't
No,
think,
I do not believe they're on our list.
yeah, it's always been case by case.
yeah.
Seems like we used to attend almost a monthly.
We did back in the day, when you were on the board, we had that on our list and we attended the monthly meetings, but
It's not in our pre-approved.
not on our list any longer. And I don't know that they have the meetings like they used to.
No, I don't think they
No,
do either.
and so it didn't make sense.
Okay, well, there's an amended motion to fund only one director, Director Hernandez, and I'll make a modified second on that. So.
Is that just for this year, or are you amending to add it to the
Just-
list to allow one director each year to go? Yeah.
Making it just for this year, so we don't have to.
Okay, any other discussion? If not, please vote. And it passes unanimously. Okay. Thank you. Okay, that's it for action items. We move on to reports. General Manager.
Yeah, just a quick announcement about a couple of awards that VWD received recently. Both were presented at the statewide California Water Environment Association Annual Award Ceremony, and that was up in Sacramento on April 14th. So the two awards we won second place in, this is again the statewide competition. We won second place in the state for the tertiary treatment plant for our Meadowlark Water Reclamation Facility. The winner was Silicon Valley. They had an advanced water purification project, which edged us out, so we took second place. That was the first year for that award, so being second place in the state, first time they have the award, that's a pretty great accomplishment. So good for our organization and good news and a great job by our folks down at Meadowlark, so congratulations to them. And the other award, we took first place in the state for the best use of social media. So that was the category, best use of social media. It was for the Work We Do series.
Yeah.
So there's little video series of all the
That's
stuff we
fantastic.
do, so.
There you go.
Great job, and we do
Yeah.
a great job.
Yeah, when you get statewide recognition from one of the premier wastewater agencies or industries in the state, that's amazing. So it doesn't get much
And
better
I
than
didn't
that.
mean not to clap for Ed for second place.
Yeah.
And this is from the state wastewater?
You know, it's the California Water Environment Association. It's a group that looks out for water quality, mostly related to the wastewater industry in California.
And how is that judged? I mean, do we send in a report? I
Yeah,
mean,
we
what
do. They accept nominations, and then they have an evaluation committee, and I believe Ryan sits on that, right? Ryan's not here, so James knows.
Yeah, Ryan was a past president of the local chapter, and then he also is a representative at the state level. I think this is his last year on though, so he actually was in the selection committee as far as valuation, but I believe he had to recuse himself on.
Yeah,
ours.
probably, a little conflict of interest.
So there's a nomination, you send in a video or
Yep.
an essay, and they vote on it, and
Yep.
gotcha. And they send you a plaque? What do you get? Just a,
I haven't seen the hardware yet, so I don't know exactly what we got. Do you guys know what we?
Well, I believe Ed might know what, but they do more than that. I mean, they came down and actually interviewed staff. Both
Oh,
Ed and I were in that process representing the management side, and it was quite extensive, because I had to leave that interview and you guys continued. Yeah, a couple hours interviewing, so.
okay, that's what I was at, yeah. We didn't know,
And-
well, cool, that is,
This is gonna go, we're gonna report this in our pipes,
Yeah, between the pipes, it'll,
and we'll put it on our website and all that.
Chris isn't here,
We're gonna
but,
talk about
Yeah,
our social,
perfect.
social media
Well
successes
deserved.
on social
on
media.
social media,
Okay.
yeah, that'd be
Yeah.
the only fit in. And,
That's great.
you know, so obviously, we all know Alicia, right? Alicia kind of is the mastermind
Oh, yeah.
behind all these things. So her and Lisa and Chris, that team does a great job on these. But the Work We Do videos are really about the employees, right? So each one is about either a person or a function that we have. And it's always amazing if you've watched some of those, just to see the on-star talent that we have just amongst our staff members. So it's really cool. So it's not just Alicia and her team, but it's all the staff members that have been the subject of those videos. So,
excellent.
They have their SAG cards?
yeah, not yet, yeah. They're not allowed speaking roles, yeah. So that's it. I just want to share that with the board tonight.
Thank you, great news.
Excellent.
Okay, next is District Legal Counsel.
Just two items. One, I'd reported a month or so ago on the Kestner litigation that was we prevailed and was going to be dismissed. The executed judgment of dismissal was entered, so it's all over. which is really good news. And we don't have to respond to the public, any more Public Records Act requests relative to that. Second is just an update on AB 1944, which I think Glenn has been following. This is a Brown Act amendment that would allow for directors to attend meetings virtually outside of a pandemic or state of emergency without posting your location on the agenda. It was reintroduced yesterday. Hopefully it will move forward. I think everybody's feeling the convenience of this situation in terms of folks participating. So that's what that bill is directed at, but it's AB 1944. So.
Was there a little caveat, there can only be so many?
Yeah, you still have to have a majority within the jurisdiction. So
Okay.
Under the current rules, you can teleconference into a meeting, but you have to prop your hotel room door open, and then the clerk has to list where you are, and you have to allow the public to come in and raid your mini bar, et cetera, so during the meeting. So.
Jim and I did one of those for Encino one time up in Monterey. That was interesting procedure.
So, all right, thank you.
And obviously, just to add on to that, if that passes and becomes the law, we'll have to make sure that we coordinate our activities, because I can't have all 5 of you saying, I want to be one of the 2 that gets to participate remotely. So you just have to bear with me if that becomes the law, and we'll have to figure out how to.
You already got your
We
one
have
day.
3.
Yeah, well, I'm planning to go to Europe this summer.
That's an expensive phone call.
Nothing says the GM has to be here, so I'll join you in Europe.
Was that it, Jim? Thanks. San Diego County Water Authority, our regularly scheduled April meeting is next Thursday, the 28th. I'll be attending in person. Okay, next is Encino Wastewater Authority.
We had our capital committee meeting this morning, and the meeting started with the dryer improvement design is completed, and it's going out to bid, and the bid will be due next week. The clarifier improvement number 4 is complete, and they're starting to do the demo on clarifier number 5 next week. We went over, budget for the total project appears to be 46.5 million. Oh, this was our budget. This was the budget for the Encino. 46.5 million, 19.5 million for operation, and 27 million for capital improvements. I asked because one of the things that keeps percolating is where these projects are major, and they take more than a year. And so I asked, well, do we need all this 27 million in 1 year? And they were confident that this was the amount that's going to be needed, even though some of these projects will boil over into the next year. We'll add budget at that time. So this is the amount that they need. Final acceptance of the primary area improvements. Boy, this thing has been around. The first portion of this was built in 1982, and then the second portion was in 1992, and with an $11.2 million project, had a 12% increase for a total of 12.4 million. And then the aeration basin improvement, final acceptance, also built in 82 and revised in 1992. And then the covers that are presently there were added in 2015. That's only $188,500. So that was the capital committee meeting.
And the Policy and Finance Committee for Encina met on April 12th. The main 2 items that were reported to us was an update on the proposed operating budget. We're going through a budget season similar to what we will be doing here shortly. And then our air quality health risk assessment, which the agency goes through, provided an update on that. And thus far, there's no concerns from an air quality standpoint, but I'm glad that that's a process that they have to go through on a routine basis.
All right, now is Encina going back to in-person meetings?
And they have not.
No, they're still holding out Although I do find that the committee meetings, the Zoom meetings are pretty convenient at 7:30 in the morning.
No, they, I would say the Encina board is fairly progressive. And there's, and I agree with this sentiment, but there seems to be a real cautious approach to going back to in-person.
Yeah.
And I think we're gonna get there here in the next probably couple months, but we haven't yet.
No,
I mean, there's other benefits too. I know that this doesn't qualify for determining an emergency, but that's a large board. And I think about it, all the time that, that's a dozen vehicles with one person in each vehicle going to a meeting, right? And so sometimes you have to, there's more reasons to do it virtually than just the pandemic. And hopefully, it sounds like the state is actually coming with some more common sense approach to this type of stuff, so.
All right, thank you. Next is standing committees. Any standing committees?
You want a Hilltop meeting on Friday?
yeah, we're gonna, go ahead.
The Hilltop committee is meeting on Friday,
Okay.
so we have not met yet
Has
since.
it been a while?
We met,
No,
what,
it's
6
a
weeks
month
ago?
Yeah, we're
Yeah,
conducting
About 6
interviews
weeks.
Friday to gather information to ascertain what recommendation the committee wants to deliver to the board. The two options, of course, are doing a minor entitlement by virtue of just the engineering and the environmental process, or doing the total entitlement, that's a total entitlement. The other is offering it to a developer of a future selection and have them do it all and see what happens. So that
Still looking at the
recommendation will
options.
be back probably in the next couple of months.
That's just with the consultant and the two board members? Is that pretty much, that's the committee?
Yeah.
Yes, but on Friday, we're actually gonna be meeting with 3 firms that are gonna propose what they would like to do. And some of the, there's different options, as far as how much risk we wanna take, how little risk we
Right.
wanna take, how much upfront spend do we wanna put up versus not very, very little or none. And so that's what we're gonna kinda hear on Friday.
Yeah, and of course, the balance of that is the more we do, the more revenue ultimately we're going to obtain. So it'll be quite interesting, I
No,
think.
that's a big project for future.
Oh, it's gonna be
rate
magnificent. I think
increases.
it's gonna be a
Huge.
flag we're gonna be able to fly over the city as to being really, provide something that hasn't been done. We took the lead from San Marcos, because you probably know that they get more revenue from lease revenue than they do from sales tax revenue. And back in the day, of course, all the commercial brokers were all up against it because, taking money out of their pocket. But as it's turned out very beneficial for the city. So we're gonna see if we can't,
Looking forward to hearing
Yeah.
more after your meeting.
yeah, it's gonna be quite exciting.
Yeah. Real quick, we had a finance committee meeting April 11th. We talked all things budget. The items were capital budget requests, preliminary salaries and benefits, and the cost of service study update, which we heard extensively tonight. So that was it for finance. Any other standing committees? Okay. On to directors' reports on meetings, conferences, and seminars attended.
I have one.
Okay.
So I attended a CSDA prevailing wage and beyond presentation by Deborah Wilder, who is a member of CSDA and apparently has written a book on prevailing wage, which we pay for our projects. So I was really interested in it because I wasn't exactly sure how that worked, and it was very, very in the weeds, very detailed, a lot of prevailing wage law, but the takeaway that I had is that if we are not ensuring that our vendors are following prevailing wage, then we can be fined quite a lot. So that begs the question, whose job is it to make sure that our vendors and their vendors are paying prevailing wage and that we are in complete compliance?
Yeah, I'll let James address that one.
Director, so engineering as far as all our capital projects, basically, we have a process in which we ensure that the contractors and the vendors that work through our process are purveying, they're listed in the, what is it called? Industrial Relations Department, DIR. And they have a number, which means they're actually registered, and then they actually are turning in their pay stubs. We also collect from our contractors their certified payrolls, so we
okay,
have
good.
it on site.
Good. And do we ever do an on-site visit and talk to workers?
No, we have our normal tailgates, which include all the pertinent information, and we attend, on site, we attend the safety meetings, but we don't have a separate meeting regarding prevailing wage with on-site workers.
Okay.
So on those projects, DIR, it has a big role in it, and they enforce that relative to the contractors. I think the other area they may have touched on is our agency contracts with folks and whether those fall under prevailing, not your capital projects, but other, the landscape people and things. In recent years, those have really fallen into gray areas, and so Glenn and his staff have worked through that in terms of defining when they have to and when there's an exception.
Okay, but we have a process.
We
and
do.
We're following it,
Yep.
and we're ensuring that we're in compliance, because it was very complicated. And I learned a lot. I'm glad that I sat through it, but it was very complicated, and it's not something that we talk a whole lot about here in the meetings. So thank you for that update.
All right, any other conferences attended? No? Okay, on to director's comments.
General Manager.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I apologize. I forgot to mention something, so if I may, go back to the GM report.
Yep.
So I just want to give you all a heads up that on May 10th, which will be our next board meeting, this room may be partially filled with fifth graders. So we have this program, it's called the Water Leadership Program. It's being done by, put together by Mr. Bill Dean. He's what we're working with the policy committee. And they have a program, thank you, Jason. So they have a program that's being taught at La Costa Meadows School, fifth grade kids, and one of the capstone projects of their class is they have to come and make a presentation to a board. And they could have gone to either the school board or here. They were having trouble with the school board, and I said, I know a few people that could probably get you on the agenda at the water district, so
Great.
they're scheduled to come in on Tuesday, May 10th, and the teacher there happens to be my wife. So my wife will be there with the kids, and I'm not sure how many kids will be there, but it's a great program, and I think you'll look forward to seeing the kids. So
Oh, good.
you show up on the 10th and you see a bunch of fifth graders here, that's why.
Perfect.
Okay, director's comments.
Yes. What's the latest with Lake San Marcos? And do we know how much it's gonna cost, and have we paid it, and are we done with that finally?
Nothing has been moving from our side. We're out of the lawsuit, but we're still tied in with the
Payment?
regulatory and potential regulatory enforcement action. So Jim, I don't know if you have anything
So I
to
think
add.
the latest was that I saw from the court, we're obviously not involved, but they did get a settlement with all the parties, I think a week ago or so. I saw something from Neil. And, but as Glenn mentioned, we're still in the regional board processes relative to the parallel track. So the lawsuit dealt with, the civil side. The regulatory board is dealing with the regulatory compliance side, so. But I can bring a full report back on.
Would you please?
On the
Yeah.
10th, Jim, if that's helpful.
Oh, perfect.
I remember when I first got on the board in 2014, and we had the first update on that. And at that time, they said, oh, it's almost done.
Yeah,
Things move slow.
We're really close.
really close, yeah.
Okay, any other director comments?
We have a meeting tomorrow, the public workshop, is that right? Do I have it on my calendar
We do
correctly?
not. So the next meeting we have, the public workshop will be a week from tonight.
A week
It'll
from
be-
tonight.
Yeah, it'll be
Thank you.
April 27th, 5 o'clock,
27th,
right
okay.
here. We will be doing our regular noticing that we always do. We'll put it on our website. We'll post it out in front in the cabinet. We're not doing a media blitz on it, but I did reach out to Gail Martin and to Tracy Bondi Pair and ask them to let any other groups know that they think may be interested to help us with the outreach. So I emailed both of those two, and they never responded, but I trust that they got the email that I sent. So.
Okay. And we notice that regularly, okay,
Yeah,
with
that
agenda. and-
noticing will probably go out Friday for the Wednesday meeting. And we'll send out whatever information we have available. It's going to be a couple-hour meeting, and there'll probably be a fair number of people here.
That's the one who responded to the letter?
Yeah, the capacity fund issues that have come in, the letter that came in December of last year, kind of driving this, and this is the effort to try to address those issues. We're not going to go item by item on the letter that came in December, but the presentation that you'll hear will address the issues contained within there.
And the board will get the handouts or whatever ahead of time as well?
Yeah, we'll get as much to you as soon as we can with the posting, and if something, not everything might be done on Friday, so you may get some supplemental information at the beginning of next week.
Yeah. Perfect.
All right. Any other comments? Director Snell?
Yeah, I know our finance and policy, or not finance, but our policy and public relations committee is working on our 216 ordinance. And I think that what we're experiencing in the upcoming weeks of having to shift our board meetings around is an anomaly. I don't think we've had to do that maybe ever, or maybe once in 5 or 6 years. But we kind of had a conversation tonight about limiting the numbers of board members that attend conferences. I'm just kind of thinking out loud and maybe trying to gauge if there's any other thoughts or opinions on this. But since we're going through this exercise with the ordinance 216, I get a little concerned when we stop doing district business to attend conferences. I'm fully supportive of the development component of it, the educational component of it, but when we're missing our regularly scheduled board meetings to conduct the board business, I wonder if we should capture something in our new ordinance, since we're going through this process anyways, that would maybe help mitigate that or prevent that from happening. Again, I don't think this is a big issue. I'm not trying to make a big deal about it. I just think that we have this opportunity that we're going through it, that maybe if anybody else feels the same way, it's, maybe it's the right time to, address that.
Yeah, I think it's worth having the discussion.
Does that, that, whatever, I don't know, the AV, whatever, it seems like that does address that, does it not?
Maybe.
It has the potential to help with that.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, you're right. The Sacramento? Yeah, absolutely.
By attending virtually.
Yep, that will help, I would think.
Right. But sometimes you may be at a conference that has a function that goes beyond 5 o'clock, right? So it's not just that you're out of the area, it's that there's a potential conflict.
You gotta prioritize.
One other thing that we may be able to help the board with better is, if you look at item number 4.1 on our agenda is called meetings. That's usually where we tell you about upcoming meetings. And we usually, when we send out the sheet, Ann prepares a sheet that tells you what's coming up. And on that sheet, she tries to let you know when there's a conflict between the conference or whatever it is and a potential board meeting. So look closely at that, and maybe we can spend a little bit of time on that at future meetings and say, hey, Aqua's coming up, it happens to conflict with our board meeting, and we can collectively make a decision whether we're going to reschedule the meeting, limit the participation of the directors at the conference, or something else. Because otherwise, it's hard for us to manage it. We get the request from the directors, and it's not my job to tell you, no, you can't go to the conference, but collectively, there's an impact, right, if the majority is not going to be here.
I think one of the problems is the proliferation of these conferences, because it was Aqua for a while, then you got CASA that's been added, now you got CSDA. And so you used to be able to gauge, usually it was May, you had a problem, in November, and now you get
Now
other
they're
problems.
pretty much every month, it seems like.
Yeah.
And as you saw by the flurry of emails, just trying to pick a date where you're all available is difficult, and it's getting more challenging.
So just something to think about since we're going through that process.
I think it's worthwhile to discuss. Okay, any other comments? Seeing none, we're adjourned.
Thank you.